Okay, guys, can everybody hear me? All right, good. So getting ready for Oklahoma. We just finished up 3 games in 6 days, and I'd say that with as much effort and energy as we put out in those 3 games, I think the guys are appreciated a day off yesterday. We'll see how their legs are today. But that's a tough stretch. In preparation for the challenge, we catch Oklahoma, a team that's ranked 8th nationally in field goal percentage, shooting almost 50% from the field. Porter Mosier, does a terrific job. He's one of the best young coaches in the country, and took the Loyola program, put them on the map, and now has done a terrific job at Oklahoma. They're also 31st in the country in scoring defense, holding teams down to just 62 points. And yesterday or last night in Morgantown, they held West Virginia to just 22 points at halftime. Oklahoma guards a lot like we try to guard. There's a lot of similarities in their coverages. And when you think about how we would design our defense, we would design our defense to be able to stop our offense. And then, of course, try to stop everybody else's offense. So the things that they'll do defensively are effective against our offense, because that's how we've designed our defense. And then finally, if you look at Oklahoma's schedule, and I'm talking about almost since back in the very end of November, where they traveled to Central Florida and beat a really good Central Florida team at Central Florida. And then they beat Florida, lost to Butler in overtime, beat Arkansas. So they're 2-0 against the SEC. A UT Arlington Alcorn game. Then they start their league play. And they beat Kansas State. Then they lose close at Baylor. Then they beat Iowa State. Then they lose at Texas. And then they lose in overtime at TCU. They lose to Kansas and Baylor close. And they just beat West Virginia. You talk about since the end of November, as tough a schedule as I've seen. And yet they're 13-7. They're receiving votes for being a top 25. And they're probably a win away from the number 1 team in the country, away from being right there on the bubble or being an NCAA tournament team. So this is a really good team and a really good matchup. That said, I do think it's probably good for both teams to step out of conference and, play somebody that doesn't play them twice a year, every year.
Our coach, we'll get started today with a question from Jordan Hill. Jordan? We'll go to Justin Hokanson.
Hey, Bruce, I was just going to ask you about Jabari. What's sort of the message been to him after you watch film and I can't imagine the last time he went 2 for 15 in a basketball game. What's just sort of has been his attitude and the message to him?
Well, honestly, we got home late Tuesday night, and yesterday was their day off. So by rule, I had no contact with him yesterday. I saw him in the gym early this morning getting shots. No surprise there. And I'll talk to him a little bit before practice. He didn't have great looks. We, with our offense, needed to do a better job of getting him better looks. But obviously, it's no secret that teams are playing him very aggressively and very physically, and that's fine. He's going to see that at the next level as well. And obviously, what a difference when you're 18 years old between, what he saw in high school versus what he's seeing, every night in the SEC. So the good news is, while he scored what he scored and we were able to win, he and Jalen Williams held Kobe Brown down to 8 points, and Missouri can't beat us, or shouldn't be able to beat us, with their best player and leading scorer only having 8. So it didn't really affect him. You just got to get to the next play as quickly as you can. Get to the next shot as quickly as you can, and don't let the last miss bother you.
Looks like Jordan Hill's back on, so we'll go to him next for a question.
Yeah, Bruce, I just want to ask about the way this game falls. It's almost halfway through the conference slate. Just how valuable is a non-conference game right now, especially against a team of Oklahoma's caliber?
Well, I think it's valuable in that we'll be seeing some different actions. Typically, leagues tend to run some of the same stuff, guard the same way. You see it every night. You see somebody else guard. You see somebody else run their offense, and you all sort of put it together. That's why, I think it's true in football. The SEC sort of plays a style. The Big Ten plays a style. And so, yeah, it'll be somewhat refreshing. Just from a schematic standpoint, I'm watching Big 12. I've been watching Baylor or Kansas or, West Virginia or different opponents that I really haven't studied all year long. So it's good to sort of step out and study some different team. I mean, look, they're going to be really prepared, as will we. They've got a great staff, and we've been working on them for a while, and they've been working on us for a while. But it'll be let's just say refreshing, but certainly not easy.
All right, Tom Green.
Hey, Bruce, kind of going back to Jabari. What's it say about him that, he has an off night like that, but he still stays that engaged defensively and on the boards? And what's it say about this team that it can win games like that when Jabari's not at his best?
Well, as it talks about our depth, which is tremendous. Devin Cambridge coming in, and how do you statistically account for 9 offensive rebounds and a half of basketball? And I don't know how many minutes did he play in the second half. Marlene's here. She'll tell me here in a second, but what, he played 10 minutes, 12 minutes in the second half. And to get 9 offensive rebounds, that's doing whatever you can to help your team win. And that's something I think his teammates recognize. By the same token, Jabari or Jalen or anybody else, defense and rebound travel. We played great defense at Missouri. They made some shots early. But then after that, our defense kind of wore them down. And that's why we put ourselves in position to win the game. We're fortunate to win it, but it was our defense. We held Missouri 18 points under their home scoring average of 72. And that's why we won the game.
Next is Mark Murphy.
Bruce, you've always been a big proponent of the SEC basketball teams. And how important is it for you guys to play well and the whole conference to play well in the matchup Saturday?
I mean, I think it's very important. It's a matter of pride. And I do think it will affect seeding come tournament time, in the sense that if one league is able to get an edge over the other, then that league has got a chance to maybe get one more team in, or maybe, get a couple of bumps up, a couple seed lines, and that could make a lot of difference as far as who advances and who doesn't. So it's important.
Right. Brian Stoltz.
Bruce, unlike most teams, Oklahoma kind of has the same system as Auburn, as that 9 players play at least 11 minutes a game. How do you prepare your bench for that kind of offense and defense that you can't kind of wear down at the end?
That's pretty impressive out there doing your homework on that. Yep. That would be something that one of my assistant coaches would give me in a scouting report. That it may not come down to just who's going to be worn out. May come, it's going to come down to execution. Could come down to some last possessions. Come down to, some free throws. And I think that's just sort of the way it's going to be the rest of the way. So look, we have been down 10 each of the last 2 games in the first half. That obviously has got to be concerning, and it is. That means we've got a lot of tightening up to do. Now, whether we can or whether we will is to be determined. It's something that we're going to try to work at, which then gives us room to improve. But if we don't, we're going to start getting beat. And so I'm encouraged and hope the guys can lock into what needs to improve.
Nathan King.
Hey, Bruce, you kind of mentioned it after the game that Missouri and Ole Miss both, road opportunities for y'all. Y'all were ranked highly. They came out firing at the beginning of the game. Who are some guys on your bench and on the team that you've noticed kind of take up leadership roles in those opportunities and kind of keep everybody together?
Well, I mean, I think KD does it with his play because he's fearless. And I think Wendell and KD would be, guys that would, you've seen Wendell play very well on the road. They're both verbal, I think, in the timeouts and in the huddles. I think overall, just sort of everybody, but when you get an uplifting from Devin, who gets 9 offensive rebounds in 11 minutes now, Marlene tells me 11 minutes of play, that just tells you that, he don't want to go home with a loss. He wants to continue to win and be ranked number one. But every night we put that ranking on the line, and the prize again, that win at West Virginia last night by Oklahoma, that was worth a lot. That's a quad one win. But on the road at Auburn, that gets you in the tournament. And so they're, again, I talked about it before, they're going to come in with their hair on fire.
We have time for 2 more. We'll go to Justin Ferguson next.
Bruce, you mentioned Porter Moser in the intro. You guys played Loyola Chicago earlier this year. Are there similarities between the way Oklahoma runs their stuff now, and how much does it help that you have had to play Loyola this season?
Well, you guys are getting better. There are similarities because obviously Porter left a system at Loyola, and I think they continue to run the system. There are tweaks in personnel. And so not everything Loyola did will Oklahoma do, and vice versa. Oklahoma, I think probably has better players because of being in the Big 12, but they're close. So I'm sure Porter's watching closely and looking at that. That'd be one of the games that he clearly will pay attention to. It's almost like he's got the advantage because he's seen us play a team that's similar to the way they play. So
we're going to finish up today with Doug Holton.
Hey, Coach. Just wondering if you could talk about Coach Smith and his banner and your relationship. And I know you were young, but do you remember anything about his teams and their run in the 80s?
Well, I do. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but 1995, I was in Southern Indiana. We'd won the national championship, and you're trying to develop the program, so on and so forth. And so I decided we're going to host a coaching clinic. And so we had Charlie Spoonhour from St. Louis and Sonny Smith. And I don't remember and we can look this up, 95, 96. My guess is by now, Sonny may have been at VCU at that point. But, we all knew Sonny from Auburn. And you talk about 2 great clinicians, 2 comedians that just had all the coaches there in stitches. I don't think I was paying very much at Southern Indiana or could afford to pay very much for coaches to come clinic. Probably paid for their transportation and a hotel and a little Christmas cash, but not much. But it took men and teachers and ambassadors of the game like Charlie Spoonhour and Sonny Smith to come to Division II Southern Indiana and Evansville, Indiana to coach coaches. Sonny could have retired anywhere. He and Jan and their family chose to retire here at Auburn, and Auburn is better off for it. Sonny coached some of the greatest players to ever play here and had as good a run here as anybody. I think Cliff Ellis's run and Sonny's run and what we're getting started have been good times in Auburn basketball history. And I think the last thing is Sonny and I have a great relationship. I enjoy him. I think he enjoys coming to practice. And he's been a real important messenger for us because he's seen us in practice. He's seen what we've tried to do. And he's been able to, get that word out there. Hey guys, I'd be remiss if today on January 27th, I didn't bring up the fact that this is Holocaust Remembrance Day. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about post-Holocaust was never forget. And it's hard to imagine, or it's hard to believe that 75 to 78 years ago, 9 million people, including 6 million Jews, were murdered. And those 6 million Jews were murdered because they were Jewish, because of how they prayed. That was only 75 to 78 years ago. And there are still people in this world, and even in this country, that want to actually deny the fact that the Holocaust happened, or that anti-Semitism, a hatred of the Jewish people, exists even still today. It does. What gives me hope is the fact that most people do recognize the tragedy, and they recognize that it can never happen again, and then be willing to do something about it anywhere around the world when it is happening again, whether it be in China, whether it be in the Middle East, whether it be in Africa, whether it be here in this country. When it's wrong, stand up and say something about it. And so I appreciate if any of that messaging gets out. Tonight at 7 o'clock at the Stanford Lawn, we're going to have a walk to remember. It won't be very long. We'll probably light some candles. We'll probably say some prayers. And I appreciate the community's support.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, guys.